Hello, everyone, everywhere. This is Bob Thibodeau with the Kingdom Crossroads podcast, and you are listening to the Going North podcast with my good friend Don Brightman. Be sure to subscribe to his podcast so you will not miss any of the upcoming episodes, and be blessed in all that you do.
And today on the Going North podcast, we're bringing some fabulous humans from across the globe. Today is no different because we got another fabulous author in the house, another person who put pen to paper and press that publish button for the world to read. Heck, even sometimes here, depending if it's on audio or not. We have an author right here who's been an active and involved Christian his entire adult life. And not only that, he has a successful career in real estate and construction. And he also has a fabulous wife who also has a successful career in chemical engineering. And thanks to their wonderful partnership, they design and lead Launch Your Life workshops around the country. And not only that, they also mentor and coach all ages to live intentionally with a Christian perspective regarding life, career choice, and professional development. And they've served at church leadership at virtually every level in their local church, as well as lead married and family ministries today. And they just keep on going today. And they have a fabulous book out. We're able to get one of the power couple on today's show, the P of the P and B, not peanut butter, Mr. Philip Bruns. How are you today, sir?
I'm good, Dom. Thanks so much for having me.
Yes, indeed. It's great having you on. I just realized the P and B. So your wonderful wife's name is Beth. So you ever thought of calling yourselves peanut butter?
No, we have not done that. So, but maybe we should consider that. Maybe our next child.
Yeah, just walk up in your next marriage meeting, like retreat or something. Be like, all right, we've been together for years, but it's time we made it even more official. We are now peanut butter. Peanut butter is here.
Not sure it'll take us seriously, but we'll do our best.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Well, as with all introductions are not allowed to be 45 days long, so mind filling in any cavities where I missed some things and tell us a bit about yourself.
Oh, well, fantastic. Yeah, thanks again for having us. We live in the Cincinnati, Ohio area, and we've been married for, almost 29 years now, and we have four wonderful daughters. They're beautiful inside and out, and in all ways. Two of them are out of college and working professionally, and we'll have our third. Will graduate soon from Indiana University. Our fourth is at Ohio State, and she's in her second year and doing well. And so we're very proud of them, and they were part of the seed, I guess, that helped us write the Launch Your Life book, and helping them navigate their years through college and getting them started in a professional life afterwards. Helping them, and their friends wanted help, and then our friends wanted to help their children, and so it kind of spawned from that. But so we're a family of four girls, and very excited about that. And like I said, we're glad to be here today and to share a little bit about our book and a little bit about what we do.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. That's right. We got a parentpreneur / dadpreneur. Christ-centered edition. That's what I'm talking about, indeed. So, what led you to become a Christian?
There was a time in my life, and my wife has a very similar story, where I knew a little bit about God. I knew a little bit about the Bible. Believed that He existed. Believed that actually, the Bible was His word and all of that. But I was kind of living the way I wanted to live and doing the things I wanted to do, and there was not a sense of a priority that comes with being a true Christian, of having God as your priority and so forth. And it was just a moment in time when I was that I realized that I found myself just kind of seeking. Life wasn't handing me. It's kind of like there was an empty spot in my life, and honestly, I was actually more interested in finding a girlfriend more than I was God at the time, honestly. And but I wanted a girlfriend that would be be kind of a good moral girlfriend, and at the same time, I had a roommate that actually had been invited to a Bible talk, and the person inviting him had left him a little business card, and he didn't want it, but he gave it to me, and I went. About 6 weeks later, I went on my own, and Don, once I started, somebody was studying the Bible with me and showing me things that things some of them I had read before, but never really applied to my life. And this is in the late 80s. I'd never really applied to my life before. Stories about Jesus and some of the parables and all that. I always thought they were good stories, but had never really applied them to my life. And so when I saw what that meant to do that, what it really meant of the Jesus dying on the cross and all that goes with that, when I really saw what that really means for me. And how that should affect my life and how I should live my life. I thought, I really need to make some changes, and so I became a Christian, and then eventually never did find a girlfriend in the moment, I guess, but a few years later, I did meet my wife one Sunday at church, and my eventual wife. and asked her out on a date, and then neither of us actually went out with anybody else again. But Christianity has always been an important part of our lives, and we've had some exposure to some other religions as well, and this is very much drives kind of what we do from day to day, how we live, who we talk with, and how we raise our children. And so it's a big driving force in our life.
So I believe 20 plus years following Christ. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, it sometimes is a bit challenging, and sometimes so you have good days, you have bad days. Just like it was for the disciples, they ran into a lot of challenges. Jesus's original guys, as well as the early church in the Book of Acts. And I would say our lives, at least we try to live, to reflect a lot of that. And but you know what? We've never regretted. Feel tremendously blessed in so many ways, far beyond just our marriage and our children. But it starts there. But we feel like God has always been watching out for us, and even led us. I think I didn't mention this earlier, but our oldest three are biological children. We adopted our fourth. So it's just one example of things that we did specifically, I think, because we're Christians, that we otherwise would not have done, and determined to make it to the end. So got a long ways to go, we hope.
Yes, indeed. So any advice for those who need to develop that spiritual endurance since you've been at this for a while?
You know what? There's nothing like applying the Bible to your life, and I mean that with full sincerity, not in a weird religious sense. Been having somebody help you do that, because that was a turning point for us. Once we there was something, I guess it just clicked. Like, the Bible's more than just a good book. There's a lot of things in there that can direct the way we live and how we think. And I think having that Bible application, going to a church where they're going to preach about and hold you accountable of repenting of your sins, and really making Jesus, just as it was for the disciples in the New Testament, making Jesus the Lord of your life. And I think our world, and just my opinion, tends to water down Christianity a little bit. And I think we got to be mindful of that and careful of that, and ultimately just go back to God's word and let godly people help you, just as they did in the New Testament, the Book of Acts, and all of that, I think.
Sweet. So in addition to the ancient good book that's still applicable today, you published your own along with your Lovely wife, launch your life. So how does it feel? What led to
Yeah.
publishing of that book?
It was like I mentioned. We helped our children, kind of navigate through it's hard getting through college and getting through handling the financial aspects of it. What should I major in, and who am I, and what is my job, and should I sign up for a job that I'm going to be in for 50 years? It's all very intimidating and scary and difficult. And so helping our children and helping a few other young people, led to us writing a book. We taught some classes and realized that there is a big need in this world of helping young people get started in not just in their faith, but the practical application of their faith in their life and whatever job, if they decide to go to college, whatever job that leads to in the back end, or if you just go into the trades or something of that nature, whatever that is. And when we started to write, the first third of the book, Dom, is really about dreaming. And dreaming for God, having a dream that God can use you regardless of and sometimes when we hear that said or we think about that, we think in terms of a full-time minister, Fred, the full-time pastor at whatever church, he's a guy that God is really using, or Sally over there at that church, she is a woman that God is really using. But when we look through the Bible, there's all kinds of people that God uses, and he uses them actually through their careers. And we cite several examples. It was really, really exciting to write about because we really tried to bring these people to life. But the first third of the book is just seeing that God can use you regardless if you go into a full-time ministry or if you decide to be an engineer or an electrician. It doesn't really matter that you can have dreams for God. God can have dreams for you. Then that's all grounded in a faith that's we have a foundation formula of Bible study and prayer and a personal ministry. And so that's really the first third of the book, because we realized talking to so many of these young people, the tendency and temptation is to get lost in lost in either confusion or I've got to devote myself to my job and God can't really use me. I was thinking about going into the ministry, but then I really wasn't. So I'm really just going to be a person, and God's really never going to use my life for anything great. And that's just not really true. So we really try to help people, with having dreams. The middle part of the book, gets into personal your equity that you have, and this is where we get more into the biblical characters like Nehemiah and Daniel and Lydia, Priscilla and Aquila. Men and women that were working. They had day jobs. They got up in the morning, they put their pants on just like you and I do, and they went to their tent shop or whatever job they had. Some of them had some pretty high level jobs. And we talk about their character. In fact, it's interesting about Nehemiah and Daniel in particular, as well as Joseph. They worked pretty high level jobs. They had a whole story. Well, Nehemiah, we really don't know his story to his being the cupbearer, his road to that. But Daniel, we know he came from Jerusalem, and he was just a young guy who was plucked away from his family, essentially to be brainwashed in the Babylonian way. And so he had a very challenging, taken away from his family, taken away from the town where his family lived and his friends and his people. That's a lot for any young person to go through. But yet his character, as Nehemiah and Joseph, and there's others as well, their character was such that their bosses, most oftentimes they were a king, a ruler, of some sort, governor, that they would recognize that those guys' God was the God of the whole world. So if it was equivalent today, they were non-believers. They're bosses. They were non-believers, but by their character and by how they did their work, and by how they carried themselves, they had such a big impact on the people around them, including some extremely high-level people. So it's pretty cool to look at that, to think about what God can do with us today. So, at any rate, we talk to and mentor a number of people, teach classes, and these are some of the struggles that they run into of seeing a vision for themselves. And so we try to help them with that.
Sweet. That's what I'm talking about, indeed. That's what I'm talking about, indeed. And definitely right. Like the transitional period is definitely hard when it comes to college and out of college. Heck, even high school to college, and heck,
Yeah.
even those out there who may even find a way to go into the unpopular trade area, which it needs to be popular again.
It does. We are not just about college. All of our children did choose to go to a university. But I'll tell you, there's a government stat that's out there that by the year 2024, so in 4 years, there will be a shortage of 7 million tradespeople. So in other words, people are retiring. The older men and women are retiring out of their plumbing and electrician, those kinds of jobs. And there's not enough young people coming in to fill in behind them. And so there will be, that's what the government is predicting, is that there will be a shortage of 7 million people in that line of work. And so, one of the factors that's getting to be more and more of a factor now, Dom, than when I was considering college back in the early 80s, and even before that, is the finances of it. It is just extremely expensive to attend a university. Even with some scholarships and things like that, there's still a major part of the educational experience. And the college debt is its highest rate ever. Lending to the weight that a graduating college student feels oftentimes is an enormous amount of debt. We regularly talk to students that are about to graduate or have recently graduated that have tens, I'm talking $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 of debt. And these are non-medical. We've talked to medical people that have, hundreds and hundreds of thousands. I talked to one recently. She had like a $400,000 debt, but she's also a doctor, and so that's a little bit different. But I'm just talking your basic 4-year degree. We talked to a young lady recently that came up to me and she said, I graduated and I have my degree, but I'm working for an insurance company and my degree's in the sciences, and so it's really I'm not doing my degree and I don't really like my job. I'm thinking about going back to a trade or tech school, community school, or maybe getting another major going back to school, but I really want to pursue the arts. Because I'm really good at singing, and oh, by the way, I'm $100,000 in debt. And I'm like, oh my goodness, man, my heart just sunk for her. And so yeah, the finances is another big piece. And it was, so with that in mind, college isn't necessarily the right answer for everyone. Sometimes going into the trades and you can get a very fine job and make quite a bit of money, just going into the trades and being certified electrician, and you can get different certificates and things of that nature that you can do very well at.
Yeah, especially with that one example you just gave, because that's rough. It's like you got the chemical degree, and then you got $100,000 in debt, and it's like, then you have the job in finance, and then it's really rough. And then want to pursue the arts, but it's like, really, with $100,000 in debt?
Yeah, what in the end, for her, what happened was She ended up, and usually my wife helps the girls and I help the guys, but to her credit, my wife and I kind of filled in my wife, and I said, she's got to get her debt under control or have a plan. And so to her credit, this young lady's credit, she actually is, she doesn't live in New York City, but she is working with a singer that has ties to New York City. And so it's a legitimate thing for her to at least pursue on a part-time basis and see if any doors might open up with that. So she's not getting paid or anything. She's just taking lessons and so forth. But what she did in her job, she went to her boss, and at my wife's suggestion, actually, she went back to her boss. And I don't know all the details of the story. I wasn't obviously involved with that, but essentially said, hey, I would like to pursue a different position, and actually found out that the boss was thinking that she wasn't very happy in her current position. And so she ended up landing into another spot that she likes a lot better, and she's actually getting paid a little bit more now, still with the same company. And then she also put a plan together to get that college debt paid down. So she'll be working on that for a long time, but you got to start somewhere, and you got to start with a plan. So that's where she's at. So she is in her early mid-20s somewhere, but she's got a plan to move forward. And oftentimes that's just what a young person needs is a plan to move forward. Dom, there's a stat out there: 43% of students that graduate with your 4-year degree are underemployed, meaning they land a job that they didn't need that degree to begin with. And it's actually, if you break it down, men and women, it's about, I forget the exact number, I want to say 39 or 37% for the guys, and it's almost half. I believe it's 49% for the girls. But you're talking a huge, huge chunk of people that are underemployed, and then once they're underemployed, the steps to get out of that back to an appropriate employment level, there's only about 1 in 5 that are able to reach that within 5 years. And so it's incredibly difficult to get started. And so while the economy is for the most part doing well, it still is a difficult time for young people to get to kind of figure out what they want to do and tie that together with their relationship with God and with their skill set. And then in the book we actually get into practicals. We have the Launch Your Life book, and then we actually have a Launch Your Life action planner as well. And so it's a guided journal to help them, to help the reader navigate these waters and figure out maybe what a major is, or if they're thinking about a major switch, or even if they graduate, what job is going to suit them the best, what line of work, those types of things. And so it's really to help young people, like I said, navigate through those waters that can be so difficult and set them back sometimes for years. We talk about financially, but just like I said, even in the employment can set them back quite a bit. And then you get discouraged, lose their faith in God, kind of lose their hopes, lose their dreams, and it can be a downward spiral. So we try to help them with that.
There you go, right there. There you go, right there. It's good you made the action planner with the extra book, so that way folks can take extra notes outside of the book and heck, even go deeper into the book and heck, deeper within themselves.
It very much is for that. I mean, it's a book like any other book you can read and so forth and get some tips out of there. But when you actually do some thinking work and spend some more time, it's very similar, like I don't know, even with the Bible. We talked about that earlier. I don't want to compare our book to the Bible by any means, but in the sense of spending some time with it, you can get a lot more out of it, of journaling and answering questions and things like that with different workbooks and things of that nature. But yeah, that's why we wanted to write that, to help be a little bit more deliberate. One of the first things we write about in the book, in fact, it was the last part of the book we wrote, but it's actually the very first part of the book. we created what we call an IPA. In fact, I even make a joke in there. If you're familiar with a beer, IPA might mean something else to you, but ours is having intention and planning and action. And we write right in there that the book, we hope that will help with the planning, with the intention and the planning, but it's going to be up to the person for the action. That's what the workbook, the guided journal action planner, we call it, is to help with the action of that. It's kind of like you may have a dream, a thought, go on vacation to San Francisco or something, and may intend to do that. You can put your plans together, but until you pull out a credit card and buy a plane ticket and make your hotel reservations, you're just going to be, those are just going to be thoughts in your mind. And so that's what we want to be about, is putting those intentions and plans into action so that they can move forward.
That's right, so they can move forward indeed, especially north. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, we get stuck and discouraged, and I think God wants our lives to be a lot more than that. Sometimes I think a lot of times we sell ourselves short, and myself included, that of what God desires for us.
That's right. Amen to that. Amen to that. So when you're on these interviews and such, or heck, even maybe doing Q&A at events with youth groups and heck, even other groups, period, is there a question you wish other folks would ask you?
Oh, that's a good question. One of the things that we wrote about and I talked a little bit about the beginning and the middle of the book, the back end of the book. We have a whole chapter on Joseph, and if your listeners are familiar with Joseph, they'll know what I mean. I mean, Joseph has like a totally, if you charted his career, he was like the favorite son of the favorite wife of Jacob. So he starts off in a pretty great spot in his family, but then his brothers, sell him out, and so he's like in a pit, literally, and then he goes and works for Potiphar and does such a great job. He's promoted, and then he goes to jail, and then his whole life is just up and down. If you graph it, it's just an up and down life, and it was very fuzzy for him, I'm sure, as to what on earth am I doing here, especially when he's spending a few years in jail for no fault of his own. It can be very, very discouraging. We find ourselves in life, maybe not literally in jail, but at low points in our lives, and we don't quite see what God is doing with us. And the thing for Joseph is, at the end, he finally figured it out, how God was using his life as an example, and eventually to save the Israelites. And so I think, if I could emphasize one thing, is that it is a long journey. And the very last chapter of the book, we write about, if you started building say the Empire State Building, and realize, man, this is really, really tall, and just kind of quit halfway through, well, it's going to be not at all what it could be. And so I think the thought of persevering, the thought of really digging in and seeking that relationship with God is so important. And understanding that, when God's involved in our lives, when he's like really involved, I mean, just like the stories in the Bible, I mean, amazing things can really, really happen. But it is a long journey, and most of the time it honestly doesn't go as we think it might. And so I guess I would emphasize that it is a the choice to be a Christian. That's a decision, I think. But it is for the long haul. Having God, work through your life and seeing how, your life is building, again, if you compared it to the Empire State Building, just brick by brick, day by day, another piece of your life is getting put together. So just like Joseph, at the end of our lives, we can look back and we can say, wow, God has done, like, this has been a totally amazing ride. But if we quit on God and quit on the hope of having an impactful life, then I think we sell ourselves short. And it's similar to an Empire State Building. It's only half built. Gosh, it could have been so much more. I encourage people to hang in there and to keep pressing and to keep looking and to keep moving forward and see what God can do.
Oh, yes, indeed. He can Mountain Dew great things. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Some great things. Yes, indeed. That's what I'm talking about. So coming
Yeah.
down. Yes, indeed. So coming down the pike here to the question that every guest gets, and that is, if you're to wake up tomorrow and you are 25 again in the current year of 2020 with all of your knowledge and experience, what advice would you give to yourself?
You know what? It's interesting you say that, because my path through college was not great. I didn't know what my major was going to be. I ended up going to 3 different universities. My wife and I are a nice contrast to each other. She went right into school and right into she got a job lined up afterwards, and she did. So she was like a really great example of how utopia would be. I was kind of a mess getting through my college years, but I did it without going into debt. I think by the time I graduated, I owed somebody like $1,500, and that was it. I worked my way through school, which I'm very proud of that fact. I think one of the biggest things is to do the work. I think that's one of the biggest things we run into, is that every college student needs to do the work. Or even if you're not in college, if you choose, like I said, a trade of some sort, when you're making those decisions, do the work so that you can make a wise choice. Sometimes younger people are forced into a choice because they haven't really done the work to open up more doors for themselves. Do the work of figuring out what their interests are, what kind of job would they like, what is a good match for their skill set. If I'm 5'10" and I played basketball in the rec league in college, I probably should not be thinking about the NBA as a full-time position. So match up your skill sets with your degree or your area of interest, but do the work. That is, we call it being the dog and not the tail. Too many times we see young people and old people too, older people, kind of getting whipped around by life like the tail on a dog. We want to encourage people to be the dog and to kind of lead their life and move forward and keep driving. But it takes work, and it's a little bit harder than just taking it easy and letting life come to you. But then that's when you end up like the tail on a dog, getting whipped around by life. But do the work, be the dog, not the tail.
That's right, folks. Be the dog, not the tail. Especially when the tongue is out
Right.
and you're all happy when the food comes. That's right.
Right.
Let me stop.
Right. You want to be in charge of your life. Don't let your life be in charge of you.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Maybe even a San Diego Charge from 5 years ago. Who knows?
Right.
Woohoo! Well, all right. I love that advice. Love that advice. So, for those who want to keep in magical contact with you and keep up with what you and your wonderful wife are doing, what's the best way for folks to reach out to you?
The best way to find us is, as you might guess, on the internet. We have a website called Launch Mini. Launch, M-I-N-I, launchmini.com. It's short for Launch Ministry. So, like I said, we're all about moving forward. But if you go to our website, and you can contact us via email from there, or follow us. We're on Facebook, and with a growing number of followers. Launch Mini on Facebook, Launch Mini on Instagram, and we also have a YouTube channel. But the best way is to go to our website, send us an email if you have questions or on something or need help with something. We're glad to touch base with you.
Well, there you have it, folks. Go on, head over to launchmini.com. That's actually clever right there. It's like short for ministry, launch mini. It's like, wait, what's what a
Yes.
mini launch? But wait, it's ministry launch. Like, yeah, yes, indeed. Clever name, clever name. Head over to that site, head over to your favorite bookstore, head over to Amazon and pick up some copies of that. Launch your life book indeed, and launch your life into outer space and all the way to the Andromeda galaxy, maybe. That's right.
On to bigger things and probably what we give ourselves credit for.
Heck yeah. That's right. And not just MasterCard and Visa either. That's what I'm talking about. Yes, indeed. So any parting words for folks still listening, Phil?
Well, I've certainly enjoyed it to be able to chit chat with you, Dom here. Like I said, if they're thinking about maybe even just a question about God or something, we're glad to help. We're not the all-knowing authority by any means, but we're certainly happy to share with people. And yeah, please, I guess I would throw out the IPA. Have intention. If these are things that you're thinking about or thinking about for your child or nephew or something, there's a difference between the A and IMP. You can have the intention, you can even plan, but please take the action to get in touch with us or purchase a book or however we can help. We're glad to help.
Thanks a bunch for your listening ears on the Going North podcast. I hope you really, really enjoyed that episode. If you enjoyed the episode, be sure to share it with your friends and family.